The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions. How's it going?
It's going good. I was scanning through all of the crazy lines of dialogue that characters say in this Street Fighter, and I couldn't settle on just one. So here are my top 4 crazy things that people say when you win a fight in Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I like Chun-Li's because it's just very, empowering, which is, there is no chance for you to beat me. Challenge someone else. And it's like everybody else has kind of weird, poorly translated lines of dialogue, and I just like that hers is just piss off, wanker. Guile, for some unknowable reason, says, "Go home and be a family man."
Right, which I remember that one in particular because it's okay, okay. I mean, that's not right.
Yeah,
that's the ending of most fairy tales.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's when the guy wins. Sorry,
Dalseems is coming in at number 2 because he just beat you to death with his weird Gumby arms, and then he says, "Now you've realized the inner mysteries of yoga." And it's I don't think of yoga as a way you beat people to death, but in Street Fighter universe it is. But the no question number 1 victory sentiment is from Zangief, who says, "Next time we meet, I'm gonna break your arms."
Yep. Yeah.
That's what he says in Victory.
Yes. Yeah. Because Zangief deep down he is an Ender level strategist where he does not want to win this fight. He wants to win all of the fights. So he doesn't want this person coming back and challenging him again, because it's just look, this guy beat me up, and if I go back, he's going to break both my arms.
So that's where I'm at with Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting, which is the game that we played.
Good episode, I think.
Ship it.
Yeah.
This came out in August of 93, and I want to read directly from the Wikipedia article. This is literally the first line of the Wikipedia article. It says, Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting is a competitive fighting game released for the arcade by Capcom in 1992. It is the third game in the Street Fighter 2 sub-series of Street Fighter games following Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. Released less than a year after the previous installment, Hyper Fighting introduced a faster playing speed and new special moves for certain characters, as well as further refinement to character balance. And reading that made me realize there was a time in history when a company, a giant, well-run, successful company, realized there was no way to update their software once it was out in the world. So they just sold you an entirely new game and expected you to be okay with it. And people totally were.
Oh, no, because this is and the problem, though, is that a lot of people see that and they're like, I'm going to do the same thing. And it fails completely because the problem is you need Starbucks level brand recognition, So if somebody says like Street Fighter 2 and it's oh man, Street Fighter 2 is so good, I pay $60 for that game. It's cool. Here's a new Street Fighter 2. It's the exact same game, but man, there's some extra moves in there. Oh my God, I'm totally in because I played this game for tens of thousands of hours. And now Chun-Li can also throw a fireball. Oh my God. That's game changing. And I don't know the exact lineup of when this kind of happened in gaming culture history, but I mean, this is very much so the thing with fighting games in general is that if you have it's kind of like the development of the meta, where it's well, Chun-Li is a bad matchup against Dalsim, but now that she has a ranged attack, how does that change everything? How does it, how does she now fit into the meta? And so people will pay money to do that if they're super into it. But the thing is, you can't just be Joe Shabatz's coffee shop. It's got to be Starbucks. This wouldn't work with Rice Star. This has got to be Street Fighter 2. What was that? What was that one weird, terrible fighting game you made us play?
Clay Fighters.
No, that was a weird, terrible fighting game I made us play. Which one was the one? The one where somehow I had a gun and still lost a sword fight.
Oh, you mean Bushido Blade?
Yes, that one. Where somehow like I shot somebody and they somehow beat me to death with a sword. Anyway, they literally brought a sword to a gunfight and somehow I lost.
Yeah,
that game.
Yeah. That's a very different kind of fighter than this fighter.
Sure.
I think my nostalgia experience for this game is probably the only nostalgia experience you can have besides I played it a lot in the arcade, which is I played this a lot with my friends, right?
Yep.
I had several friends who had this game. I don't recall ever owning this game, but it wouldn't have mattered if I did because it's Street Fighter 2 Turbo : Hyper Fighting, right? You play it at your buddy's house, you play it at your cousin's house, you play it with your neighbor, right? Like that's how these games are meant to be played. And that's the only way I have any memory of playing them is I played them at my neighbor across the street. I played it over at Brian's house and I played it with my other friend, Alex. Like that is how I remember playing these games is in the living rooms of those three friends.
Yes. And myself as well. This is actually one that I did not own, but all of my friends owned it. And again, this was Street Fighter 2 was the Smash Brothers Melee of our childhood. You know,
that is not at all a poor comparison.
No, I mean, it's just, it's the game. It's the game you all got together and played, you know? I mean, it's just what you did. You all got together and it was, for us, it was this NBA Jam. There was just a handful of like really good couch co-op games that you could play. And this was definitely one of them. Speaking of the nostalgia experience and just time in history, because I think this is as good a time to bring it up as any. If you want to date this game, you can, because you fly to the USSR. And I found that like weirdly nostalgic. I don't know if nostalgia is the right word for this, but it's one of those things. 1993, to answer what you're looking up right now.
Ah, damn it! Because so here's the thing: the original Street Fighter came out in like 87 or 89 or something. And so when I saw that the USSR was in there, I actually had this kind of moment where I was like, "Oh, well, I mean." You know, because Zangief must be in one of the earlier games, but surely by August of 93, the USSR was, but yeah, it turns out.
I just literally saw your face light up, which normally means you've opened a new tab.
There's a lot of white on that guy's face right now. He must be staring at a fresh browser tab.
1993 to answer your next question. Yeah, so which is interesting because and this is only a tangent from the game, but I do remember like because 93 we were young but conscious, you know. I mean, it's not like when you're like I was alive during that time. Like I was alive during the 80s. I don't remember much of the 80s, you know. But I do remember like maps saying the USSR. And then they just kind of stopped saying the USSR and started saying Russia. And I never really ran that to ground at the time because I was young and didn't have that wasn't even on my radar. But yeah, like this is literally the USSR fell. So, and again, because this game was just remade. I think that like, because the original Street Fighter 2 was in 92. Mm-hmm. So the USSR was still around then. And it actually fell during this thing's update cycle.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, we played the SNES port of the arcade cabinet, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which did hit the arcades in 1992, which means they were developing it in 91 and the beginning of 92.
Right. So, yeah. So, I mean, just though, I mean, really imagine you're a game developer, right? And you put in something as innocuous as just countries that people come from, you know? And then all of a sudden somebody's like, yeah, so here's the thing. In one of these updates, we're going to have to change a portion of it because the USSR doesn't exist anymore. And it's not like it's like some smaller country that is not very well. It was the USSR, you know? So it's like, they probably thought it was a pretty safe bet to put that in the game. They were wrong.
And I don't want to elaborate too much on this because I'm really not trying to make light of what I'm sure is a terrible situation for these folks, but it's going to happen with the UK and the EU, right? any show or
mhm.
movie or book or anything that refers to the UK as part of the EU, like that any day now, that's not going to be accurate anymore.
Yeah, which is just weird. I don't know why. Like, it's one of those things where you just kind of feel like, well, no, countries are countries now. Countries are countries, but they're not. They're still really fluid. In fact, to the point where even Yakko from the Animaniacs, his "Countries of the World" song is like surprisingly outdated now. That's it's weird. I don't
No,
know.
we'll know we're in trouble when the U.S. Capitol song is outdated.
Yeah. Anyway, so shilling?
We do need to shill.
It's shill
It is
o'clock.
shill o'clock. So links for our Patreon, our Twitter accounts, my Twitch stream, all of that stuff is in the show notes. You should go rate and review us on the Apple Podcast if you haven't already, because there might be a thing coming up that's related to that soon. But we actually
We're gonna do an episode about it.
But we
Oh no, sorry, I got too excited.
we got a new patron this past gameplay cycle, so welcome new patrons. Just welcome friendly people who say nice things to us on the internet, and an extra hello to those of you who are foolish / generous enough to give us money and help us make the machine go, because we love doing this, but it is nice to know people are listening and that they're enjoying it. Like, that does make the labor of love less of a labor.
Yes, I would say that while I do enjoy doing this, it is good to know that we're not just screaming into the void,
Like most people on the internet.
Yeah. Well, I guess on that note, visuals.
So here's a weird little behind the scenes thing. This game was part of a poll we did, and fun fact, patrons, they get to vote twice, because they get to vote in the public
Nice.
poll and the private poll. And so I just thought it would be funny if I was like, oh, there's 3 Street Fighter 2 games on the Super Nintendo. Which one should we play? So there's Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and then Street Fighter Alpha 2. And personally, I was really hoping for Street Fighter Alpha 2, because the sprite work in that is just unreal. That is when they really pivoted from a realistic style to a more cartoony but stylized, like really artistic kind of sort of the designs for characters that we know today, right, in the 3D era. Now, I was bummed when Street Fighter Alpha 2 didn't win, but what I realized is Street Fighter 2 Turbo actually took on the challenge of, let's make selling this game to people worth it. They did not just take the Street Fighter 2 graphics and then add a little bit of extra stuff. Character portraits completely redrawn. A lot of the character sprites are modified or completely redrawn, and they gave you additional color options. The levels have some additional detail, and there's additional stuff going on in the backgrounds. There's all of the pretty iconic art in Street Fighter 2. The way you remember it is probably how it actually looked in Street Fighter 2 Turbo, because that's where they like came back and polished up some of the rough edges and just made everything look a little bit better. So I was looking forward to tearing apart the visuals in Alpha 2. But Street Fighter 2 Turbo is what I remember in my mind. Like, if you look at Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 2 Turbo side by side, the differences are really apparent. If you just look at Street Fighter 2 Turbo, you'd be like, oh, Super Nintendo game, no big deal. But then when you actually see what they improved and the little, kind of tender love and care they went back and did on all of the visuals, it's like, oh, this isn't just a shameless cash grab. This is a shameless cash grab made with love.
Yeah. I mean, or basically that somebody in the upper echelon said like, hey, we're doing a shameless cash grab. And they're like, what? Okay, what if it was just a cash grab? Like, does it have to be shameless? And the person's like, look, I'm just in it for the cash. So, I was trying to make your life easier. Yeah, I was trying to make your life easier by making it a shameless cash grab. If you want to like put work into it, then, go for it. Yes. So, I really do feel that the graphics, the sprites, all that, they are what I remembered. I will, even to the point where the loss condition people, I guess, like the people who have, like, when you lose,
you're all beat up.
Yeah, you're all beat up, but it's just ridiculous how beat up you are, you know? And I remembered that being over the top. Like, I mean, you know, and some more so than others. Like, Chun-Li doesn't look too awful. Not what's his name? Electric, the electric Brazil guy.
It's Blanca. Yeah, it's Blanca.
No, because I always know, and no, this is something that I always did when I was a kid too. I get him mixed up with Braca from
Mortal Kombat.
Right. You know, so I'd always screw those names up and I'd be like, it's Braca. And they're like, no, it's Blanca. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's Blanca. And no, that's the point. But anyways, like his face kind of looks like, oh yeah, he got kind of knocked around a little bit. But then there's like Dalsim, who looks like he was put through a freaking meat grinder. I forget. There was another person that
is it Sagat?
Sagat? Yeah, no, yeah, that's what
he looks pretty messed up.
Yeah, he blocked most of those with his face. You know, I mean, clearly, like he is just pretty bloodied. So I remembered that being a thing. And the other kind of little thing that I like is that, at least I believe with Braca, is that when you press the like, I want to start again thing, he makes his little howl like, yeah, I'm back in it. And there's a little twinkle in his eye.
So everybody gets the eye twinkle, which I think is a great little detail. But they do all get a unique sound effect, right? So there's some kind of in-character voicing. It's not just like a generic sound effect, but we'll get to sound effects.
So the one thing though that, and I wasn't sure whether I put this in the gameplay. Originally I had this in gameplay, but I think it's more of a visual thing, which is that some of the characters are really sticky to play, you know? Like, so when you press punch, it feels like you press punch and then you make yourself a cup of coffee, you come back, you sip it, you get caught up on current events, you know, you scroll through Twitter and then you're like, oh, look, I finished up with the punch. And so, but not all the characters are like that. Some of them move like they're on cocaine. But what I think that the issue that is that, you know, like obviously they're meant to move more slowly, but I think that basically they draw out their frames of animation, you know? And so that in and of itself, the number of frames of animation, which is great, it really makes the movements look fluid, but it can make it really kind of stagnant as far as when you're like, I need to hit this person. I don't care how you animate it. And especially then too, when you have that many frames of animation, it can make the hitboxes really squirrely. And that in a precision fighter game can be problematic.
Well, it's okay because they're going to release Street Fighter 2 hyper fighting, and that will have an even better balance than Street Fighter.
Oh, you know, I heard good things about that.
It's going to be great. So I want to second what you're saying, because I don't want to go into the mechanics of the turbo mode because we'll get there. But one of the things that I like about the turbo mode is because there's 4 stars, right? So there's normal, turbo with 1 star, turbo with 2 stars, 3 stars, and 4 stars. My guess, if I think I might just be making this up, but my guess is 25% faster, 50% faster, 75% faster, twice as fast. So when you go above 2 stars, because the game is just literally happening faster, it makes the slower characters still feel snappy, and it makes those dragged out animations snappy, and it makes the hitbox feel the same, but because everything is so much more frantic, you're either you're like Gohan and you can't even watch the fight, right? You're unable to even follow the action, and so whatever. Or you've learned to, you know, read people's power levels and you can totally keep up and you're just an expert player. So I actually liked the turbo setting literally just for how it changed the visuals, because it just makes everything look smoother. And I don't think, to the best of my knowledge, they're not adding any frames. They're not doing it. They're literally just making them play faster. And it just feels good. Like I can't fight well at 4 stars turbo, but I do really like the way it looks at 4 stars turbo.
Yeah, no, I think that for me personally, and this is definitely flirting with mechanics, but with the visuals and the hitbox, is that it's it's not always intuitive exactly like where your hitbox is going to start and where the other person's hitbox is going to start. And we're basically, it's like where you're like, I have now hit the person versus the person has hit me. All of that was not always intuitive for me. It was intuitive. Here's the problem: is it was intuitive like 90% of the time, which is great. It just wasn't ubiquitously intuitive, and the game knows that because the game knows exactly how the hitbox is supposed to work, you know? And so because of that, it's just something that you have to learn and internalize. And I don't wanna. So that became a point of frustration. However, and again, I don't know exactly where in, you know, the timeline of fighting games this came up, but it's like a staple now of fighting games is that, you know, if you want to be good at it, you have to know exactly how the hitboxes line up and exactly, you know, like, okay, if this person throws this attack, it's going to hit here, but then they're vulnerable here. So if I throw this move at approximately this distance, I will hit them and they will not hit me. That is something that if you want to be good at the game, you need to know all that stuff. But it is a learning through practice kind of a situation. It's a practice style of game, which is not generally my jam. Fighting games are not also generally my jam. So I do feel that, though, that like I said, like if you look at some other fighting games, that they've made it more intuitive, but it's not something I can fault the game for because this is just like kind of a thing of the genre. You know,
and I will say in Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting's defense, of the fighting games we've played, and I was actually surprised how many we've played over the course of the show.
Yeah, how many we played?
At least 4, right? Because Mortal Kombat, Bushido Blade, Clay Fighters, and now this one.
Yeah.
Oh, and Smash. I mean, Smash is technically a brawler, but let's not split hairs. Right, so yeah, at least 4 or 5 if you count Smash, and maybe more. Go browse through the back catalog and go outside your house and let us know. So,
yep,
I did feel that the hitbox in this at least felt the most consistent. Like, you're absolutely right about having to memorize it, and you're absolutely right about it not always being exactly where you would have guessed until you took a measurement and observed it. But those quantum calculations seemed like they were playing out the same way every time. And that to me is the difference between the visuals supporting the gameplay in a way that I can accept and the visuals supporting the gameplay in a way I can't accept. Because, you know, if you're E Honda throwing your big palms out there or Chun-Li throwing your fire kicks or whatever, like, as long as, you know, I will smash Guile's stupid face in the same place or closer, like I would expect to do, then we're fine. If sometimes I'm like, oh no, come on, that totally hit it, like that feeling to me is the death of a fighting game. And I never got there.
I would agree with that. And that's the thing, is that it's not always intuitive, but it is consistent, you know? So there were never times when, you know, where I was just kind of like, and I guess, and that's something that's interesting, which is to say that even though it's not intuitive, it always felt fair. Whereas there are some hitboxes that they are unintuitive and also don't seem fair, even though they are probably just as consistent. The exemplar for this is Sonic's Crush Death hitbox, you know? Like, it's got to be consistent, you know? Like, it's not like he's morphing all over the place as the hedgehog, right? But I swear to God, like, I'd just be like, no, that was, I wasn't even near that thing. Why did that hit me, you know? So it definitely felt fair. It's just that, you know, again, part of the issue from my playthrough was that I was predominantly playing against the computer, and the computer knows this stuff perfectly, you know, whereas if you're playing, you know, with a friend, they don't, you know, they are as much learning it as you are, you know? So yeah, another thing I did kind of want to touch on that I thought was kind of a neat touch is, so I know that there's like a whole plot behind this thing.
I mean,
right?
ostensibly,
I think. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I know it's not the movie, which I've also never seen.
Are you sure it's not?
Just from how much everybody reviles, I think Street Fighter 2, the game, is to Street Fighter 2, the movie, as Mario, the game, is to Mario, the movie, in that they're probably about the same amount of the same, or as Mortal Kombat is to Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Not Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
It's Mortal Kombat to Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat's fine, but Annihilation. Ooh.
Yeah. No, actually, if anybody gets the chance, go out and watch the Screen Rant pitch meeting for Mortal Kombat Annihilation. It's good. So anyway, so this is a street fighter. Like, they are fighting in the streets. So this is, it's kind of weird, and this is definitely straying from visuals, but it's kind of weird that, like, this, whatever this tournament is, it is well funded enough to fly fighters all over the world, but, like, not enough to hold an actual venue, because you're fighting in the streets.
I don't remember the story. I suspect that this is like an illegal underground sort of thing, right? And so it's not like I'm competing to be the heavyweight champion of the world, and it's like part of a well-established industry that sells advertisements and has ring girls. Like, this is these people, it's like Fight Club. Like, these people are just wailing on each other in the streets, and the onlookers are just like, there go those two drunken hobos just laying into each other, who seem really well dressed and incredibly talented at martial arts.
and that's kind of the feel I get from it, right? It's like a Fight Club, right? But in Fight Club, they weren't importing fighters from all over the world. Like, that's the one piece of cognitive dissonance that, like, I just can't reconcile, which is that it's like, okay, so yeah, it would be like me, you and me and a bunch of our friends, like, we're all just going to, like, lay into each other's spar. I mean, basically like our Kung Fu studio. It would be like our Kung Fu studio, but then if one of us said, like, I bet there's a guy in China we could go beat up. Let's go do that. And then we all got on a plane and flew to China to go beat up this one guy.
So here's how you tie this back to visuals. Because this is an arcade port, the character select screen is also the level progression screen, and it literally just shows an Indiana Jones style plane, like, going all over the world, to the USSR even, right? So, like, you not only are you in different levels where you're like, oh, now I'm in the USSR, now I'm in China, now I'm in the USA, right? But you literally see the airline miles being racked up. Like, I mean, Guile is apparently in the Air Force, so he has a jet, but everybody else, like, they just fly coach. Like,
I do think that the military frowns upon you taking a jet to go to an illegal street fighting tournament. I don't know. I'm not in the military.
So I'd rather you didn't just speak about something you know nothing about.
That's fair. I'm not an expert. So anybody who is in the military who has flown a jet, go outside of your house and yell whether or not you're allowed to take that jet to illegal tournament. So the way I was going to tie it back to visuals is, I do appreciate the backgrounds, right? The backdrops and the back settings, right? Because they do have that Street Fighter feel, right? Is that it's not, like, just some generic, like, splashed on background, and they're animated because it like Ryu's isn't, because apparently you're fighting him in his master's dojo that he had to kill but never told why or whatever.
I think there's like birds in the background. His is one of the least animated, but even his background still has some motion.
It does, but it makes it very much so feel like it is, it's just happening. Like, there are onlookers, there's an audience, and it actually it not only does it add some variation to the screen, it never competes with what you're doing. If you want to focus on the fight, the background just fades away. But if you want to focus on the background, there's some weird stuff going on back there, and it's kind of fun. One of them, and okay, I don't know. Also, I mean, this is just an episode filled with stuff I'm not an expert on. I am not an expert on poultry manufacturing, if that's a nice way to say, but literally in one point there is somebody who's holding a chicken upside down
in China.
Yeah, in China. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know if that's really how that goes down. Maybe it is. But if that guy's choking a chicken, which is what it looks like he's doing, that's kind of funny, right?
So
it's juvenile, but it's funny.
Here's the thing. The note that I have for this in my notes is, background animations aren't meant to be looked directly at. Because they do make the world feel super alive. I agree with you 100%. And I'm really glad that they did it. But you're not really supposed to look right at them. It's like a solar eclipse. Like, appreciate it in your periphery. because in Guile's stage, one of the guys is like, cheering, like, yeah, get him kind of thing. And then there's another guy who's sitting, and his cheering motion also looks like chicken choking. But there is no chicken. So, like, while I was playing this, an onlooker literally said, is that guy in the background masturbating? Like, there's just no way. Because, I mean, it's all the sprites in the background have, like, a couple of frames of animation, right? It's just movement, smash to other movement, smash back to the first frame, right? And so if you're not looking right at it, it's like, oh, the world is alive and these people are really here watching this fight. But if you look right at them, don't look right at them.
Yeah, if you look right at them, stop looking right at them. No, it is very much so like, the edge of the Truman Show universe, where he plows into it, where it's just, again, at a distance, it looks fine. But when you actually focus in on it, it is just the uncanniest of uncanny valleys. But again, to me, you're not supposed to be looking directly at it. And so to me, it's just kind of, this falls into the category of just kind of fun, like weirdness, where it's like, yeah, it's one of those things that on the playground, you would be like, oh yeah, well, on the background of Street Fighter 2 in this stage, this person's choking a chicken. You get it? And it's just, yeah, it's just weird little stuff like that. So I really enjoyed the backgrounds. The one final note I had for visuals, just because this is apropos of nothing, which is that, they're clearly ripping off some people, as like far as character models go.
I mean, yeah.
Right. But I just think it's kind of I don't know whether, so the reason why I bring it up is not to crap on it, because I'm fine with it, is so obviously you've got Balrog, who's Mike Tyson, right?
No, he's Mr. Dream from Punch Out.
Yeah, or whatever other things that Mike Tyson wasn't a part of. What's that? The one it was Futurama, where they say like they're doing a Scooby-Doo knockoff, like parody, and they're like, oh, look, it's Larry Bird. What do you think, Larry Bird? This is Larry Bird. I got your script. I do not want to be a part of this show at all. Please no longer contact me. That's great, Larry Bird. But like Guile is obviously supposed to be Jean-Claude Van Damme, which is funny because when they went to make the movie, they got Jean-Claude Van Damme to play Guile. So at that point, I'm like, well, you've kind of endorsed it at that point.
Well, I mean, but he's supposed to be like an All-American, which Jean-Claude Van Damme's super not.
It's not. No, it's just weird hilarity all the way down. All of that being said, though, is that this is kind of the cultural version of Smash Brothers, where it's like in Smash Brothers, you took all of the different characters from all of these different games. And you're like, I mean, it's the equivalent of like smashing your action figures together. Well, this is the cultural version of that. It's like, well, what if we took this hyper stereotype of, Muay Thai fighting and this hyper stereotype of, like Indian yoga and hyper stereotype of all this, then you just take the action figures, smash them together, So I kind of thought that was kind of cool, is that all the character models are very varied, but they're stereotypes, but they're kind of supposed to be, because it's supposed to be the nth stereotype fighting the other nth stereotype.
Yeah, and this is actually the last note I had for visuals as well, which is just the amount of character that the characters have is fantastic. And you can see from literally the next game in the series onward that they worked harder and harder to convey with the visuals. Like, oh, this guy's muscular. He's insanely muscular. And like, oh, this guy's like kind of got some demon in him. He's got a lot of demon in him, right? Like they really started to do stuff over the top, but you can see all of the groundwork for that being laid here, right? Unfortunately, Chun-Li is the only girl, right? So you've got 7 fighters and girl, right? So that's a bummer, but she's
it's like playing Guess Who, and when you get like I think there were like 2 black people or something like that.
I think there was like 2 black people and one of them had glasses.
Yeah. It was, or I think only one of them was a woman.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
Yeah,
like,
it was
is it a woman? Half of them go down. Are they black?
Oh, you sunk my battleship. But I really like, because like Ryu and Ken are supposed to be, they were trained by the same master, so they wear similar gis. But Ryu is in not just different colors, but he has short brown hair, and Ken has flowing blonde hair. And then like Dalsim looks like a ridiculous stereotype, and Balrog looks like a ridiculous stereotype, and Chun-Li looks like they're all stereotypes, but they have a lot of like fun, not just
characterization.
Yeah, and even into the way they move, right? Like Chun-Li, of course, being the one girl, like when she wins, she totally drops, because she's like a police officer. She's the strongest woman in the world. Like that's literally her like thing. And when she wins a fight, she like jumps up and down like a teenager and goes like "Yatta!" and does like the peace sign, right? When Balrog wins the second fight, because every character has a first fight win pose and then a match win pose. Balrog just rips his shirt off and like shows off his muscles. Like Sagat, like
dude is shredded. Yeah. I mean, he must be a waiter, because he's stacking plate like 7 times a week, man. I mean, he worships at the Temple of Swole.
Wouldn't that make him a busboy?
Why do you come to this, man?
I don't know. But I really love the amount of character in all the characters. There's no duplication. There's no way you could possibly confuse any of them. Everything is just super unique to every single character. And as they added more and more fighters to the roster, that got harder and harder, but they generally managed to do it, right? Like, one of the things that's different about this game from its predecessors is you can play as the bosses, and the bosses are wholly unique, right? Balrog,
Vega,
what?
Sagat, and M. Bison.
What's the Spanish guy's name?
Vega.
Yeah, all 4 of the bosses like look and
the only guy who's allowed to bring knives into the arena.
Well, and M. Bison has psychic powers.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I mean, like, but psychic powers, like, they're still his.
And Sagat like is a giant. I mean, I know again that's just who he is, but he's huge.
He is enormous, man. He's got to be. He's like Piccolo level tall. Like he's
like Cell.
He's Cell with. Yeah, but with his like weird head deal, he's tall. You know.
But visually, I think, in the character portraits, in the way they fight, in the way they look, in the way they move, in their victory poses, in their bloodied up face, like there's zero chance you would ever confuse any 2 characters. Every character is wholly themselves. And now I'm done with visuals.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that. I think that the best way to say it is like, does it pass the silhouette test? Which is, like if you looked at their silhouette, would you be able to tell them apart? Absolutely.
Oh,
no doubt.
Sorry. Somehow I didn't mention Blanca, who has no question the most terrifying silhouette, but yeah, him.
Yeah, like what's his deal? Again, like when we don't do research for this, and I'm not very up on the Street Fighter franchise, but there's got to be like, was he raised by wolves? Like, was he raised by bears?
Electric wolves?
Like
was he raised by Pikachus?
No, that was wolves, and still no. But yeah, so sound.
So sound. Capcom, in my opinion, they do them some good music. I really like Capcom music in general, and what I think of when I think of Capcom music in general is Street Fighter and Mega Man. And Mega Man has some gosh dang iconic music, and I realized listening to these Toonskis that most of this music is not as seared into my memory as like a lot of the Mega Man franchise music. But the second I heard these songs start playing, I could sing along, right? So like, yeah, my brain had to like go into cold storage to retrieve these particular tracks, but they were there. Like they were still totally there, because if you play this game with friends for hours and hours and hours, like there's only so many stages, right? There's 12 stages, I guess, right? So you're going to hear them over and 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 over, which is fine because it's all good music. Like I don't think it's as iconic as Mega Man, but it's all good music, and it's as varied as the visuals for the stages are, right? The China level has the China music, and there's 3 USA levels, but they all have different music, right? Because one of them, the Balrog level's like at a casino, so it's got like casino-y music, right? There's 2 in Thailand, 2 different Thailand, 2 in Japan, 2 different Japanese tracks, right? So like you get a lot of variation in how each level sounds that is every bit as crucial to the feel of that level as how that level looks.
Agreed. And it's interesting because my main note for this one was it sounds like a Capcom game, and it now that we have played, it's one of those weird things that, I don't know whether this makes us more or less endearing at parties, but when somebody says, oh, well, something video game music, and it's like, well, actually, like I feel I could now speak educatedly about what Capcom music sounds like. I don't know if that's interesting to anyone, but it's interesting to me. And hopefully to the people who listen to the podcast. But the people who listen to the podcast opt in, whereas when you're cornered by us at a party, like you didn't necessarily opt into that conversation.
And you cannot opt out.
No, we'll follow you around. It gets weird, but it's important. But yeah, no, it sounds like a Capcom game. Here's the weird thing for me, is that there is one Capcom game. So I played the mess out of Mega Man X, right? And this does sound a bit like Mega Man X, but the one Capcom game that I played the ever-loving mess out of that just really stuck in my head was UN Squadron, right? Which we have played, and you go listen to the episode. This music sounds exactly like UN Squadron to me, And so basically, and I think it's better crafted, is that it doesn't have so many extremes like UN Squadron did. UN Squadron was also made like 3 years earlier, so like they maybe were like, this didn't sound quite as good, and they honed it a little bit. But yeah, when I queued it up, I was like, oh, is this UN Squadron? No, it's not. But it's a Capcom game, so Capcom makes music. When they make music for the SNES, it sounds like this. It's all good, So yeah, it's interesting how they have their own signature kind of tunes, as that were.
It's the sound palette that they write their songs from. It's why all of the, I can't think of the name of the production company, but the company that did ActRaiser, like all of the games in that series sound the same because they all draw from that same sound palette. One of the things that a fighting game always does by, let's say, fiat, is because it's a fighting game, you got to have everybody like calling out their moves, right? So every time you fire a Hadouken, you say Hadouken. Every time you fire a Sonic Boom, you say Sonic Boom. Every time you do the super fast palm technique as the Honda, the super fast kicks as Chun-Li, there's like, like to go along with it. And that's all fine, because what I actually want to say here is somehow none of these are annoying, even on turbo mode on a high difficulty where special moves are being thrown left and right. They don't get annoying, except Sagat's hyper. I cannot stand that giant ass going hyper, 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 hyper uppercut, hyper, hyper, hyper. It's like, it's the one bit of dialogue that is in the game that I just find insufferable, right? I
think it's closer to a monologue, which is
spoken,
weird.
I mean, like spoken, character voices, because there's
But it's just because I mean, to be fair, there's kind of a back and forth. It's just the weirdest dialogue ever, where it's like hyper Hadouken, hyper, like it's like, is this conversation? But anyway, sorry.
But there's a lot of Foley, right? There's a lot of slapping, punching, things getting broken noises, right? Every time you land a kick, it or miss for that matter, it goes like, whiff, 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 thwop, right? So there's like a lot of like kind of noises. None of those grated on me. All that sounds fine. Everybody else's spoken lines all sounded fine, but Sagat needs to shut the hell up forever, because when I'm fighting everyone else, I'm like, I must be the world's strongest. And when I'm fighting Sagat, I'm just like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. I will shut you up.
Maybe that's why his face is so messed up in the thing, because people just exclusively punch him in the mouth. Like he has no body shots. He like wins because people are unwilling to hit him in anything but his mouth.
I will punch you in the mouth.
So for the sound effects, I've got like that they're hilariously awful, in the sense of like that they're not like but, but I say that they're genre defining, right? Which is to kind of what you said, which is that, the Hadouken, right? Like for me, it was Ryu and his Hadouken, like mostly because when I was fighting him, he was the first real honest to God skill wall I hit. And I fought him like more times and I got real irritated with him. But that Hadouken. I'm like, I get it. But again, you need to know that like a Hadouken has been fired, And so the visuals are always, very, very clear. But at the same point in time, having both cues lets you know, like, so when you hear like, like he's doing the animation, he's not about to punch. He's not about to do anything else. He's going to throw his signature move. And that's kind of the bulk of my very robust notes for sound, but which is that, and this is something that I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg here, but it's something it's rife in anime as well, where like everybody has their signature attack and they have to call it out before they do it. It's just kind of a trope, and this game follows it. And again, to your point, is that it never gets annoying. I think that my annoyance with it is directly proportional to how much I'm getting ruined by it.
That's fair.
So like,
and that may be directly related to why I hate the hyper so much.
Right, because I mean, if somebody, for example, because it was specifically Ryu's Hadouken, Ken's didn't bother me, but he didn't spam it at me like Ryu did, jerk. So like I was way more okay with Ken because I was able to like pummel the mess out of him way easier than I was Ryu. So, and I wonder if that's like a thing in life where it's like people bother you a lot are proportionate to how much of a pain they are. I mean, like little annoying things that people will do, if somebody like picks their teeth, but they're like inconsequential to you. Whereas if your boss picks their teeth, you're like, that's the grossest thing ever,
There may be some correlation there. I could believe that.
But yeah, so that's kind of all I've got for sound.
So one thing I wanted to make sure I called out, because we often wax philosophical about whether or not a game could be played on mute, right? When we're talking about the audio. And you certainly could play this game on mute. I think it would be harder to learn this game on mute. And here's why. Everything you said about the visuals matching up with like the Hadouken, right? Like it's super obvious when he's doing the motion, and the audio cue, I think, comes at the same time. So I don't think you necessarily get that information any sooner. One place that you do get very important information that doesn't always have a distinct visual to go with it is this game. And because you have nothing else for audio, this could be our segue into controls. Is this game has heavy punch, medium punch, and light punch, then heavy kick, medium kick, and light kick. Sometimes they're high, medium, low, but not for everyone. Sometimes each one looks visually distinct, but not for everyone. But they all do the same audio cue when you miss. The low punch is usually, or the light punch is usually the fastest, and it goes like whiff. And then the medium punch is like whiff. And then the heavy punch is like whoosh, right? So like there's a super, super obvious audio cue. And again, for most of the characters, their heavy kick, their medium kick, and their light kick look visually different, but not always. Some characters, like their medium and light, looks the same, but the light is a little bit faster. And having that different audio cue really helps you understand not just what you're doing as you're learning how the characters move, but when you dodge a kick or you dodge a punch, it kind of tells you like, oh, what would that have been? Like, would that have been a heavy punch and that would have rocked my socks? Or would that have been a light punch and I would have managed to survive it, right? So you get some, I think, just kind of novel audio feedback from this that you don't really get in a lot of games, because usually it's like, oh, the ship fires bullets or rockets, and the rockets make a different noise than the bullets. And it's like, well, but I can see that, right? Whereas if it's a jab or a heavy jab, it's like, well, but I can't really necessarily see the difference, but I can definitely hear it, right? From the first time you sit down, you can hear the difference, even if you can just barely see the difference visually. The one and only other audio thing I have to say is Did you pause the game at all while you were playing?
Yeah, what's that about? It's concerning.
It's awesome.
Like
I love it so much.
Oh, I mean, so the thing is that, again, this may have just been the way it was painted for me, because this is, okay, a brief tangent is, the only time I really had to play this game was when the kids were awake, right? But that's not uncommon. Like, I'll play these games a lot of times while the kids are awake. Teddy loved this game. Like, he later on was playing Dada's game by like running around, because initially I was playing as Sagat. Like, he was running around and just like lifting his one leg and like putting his arm up, like just like Sagat did. And he was like, no,
like the Muay Thai block.
Yeah, and then at one point he's like, no, Dada, you be this person and I'll be this person. And he like got into his little fighting thing. I was like, this is amazingly endearing. That being said, the only time when I paused the game was because the kids were doing something that I immediately had to go address. So I didn't even know what it was, but I just like hit pause, and then all of a sudden the game from my seat was just screaming at me or making like some crazy amount of noise. I was like, God, what? There's too much. It's all too much. So, yeah, what was that? Sorry, I never really dug back into it.
So it's like it's like an orchestra hit, kind of like dun dun dun. Like, I don't know why that's what the pause sound effect is. I would love to believe that there is some deep connection to the lore of Street Fighter. And that is like the call of the god of street fighting. So, like, I would love to believe that there's some utter insanity, but I don't think that there is.
Jeff, god of street fighting.
Jeff, the god of street fighting. Yeah.
Yep.
From the former USSR.
Yes, that is my understanding, at least, of the current god. So there's like Odin, Loki, Thor, Jeff, and
Jesus,
Denise. Jesus. He's in there being cool, handing out bread and stuff, water, but the water gets fun later.
While you're fighting, it's water, but later. So
yeah. Woo.
So I want to call out something with the controls that somehow didn't come up when we were playing any of the other fighting games, which is this game actually made me wish I had been able to play it with a fight stick. Because I'm not a big, like you, I'm not a big on fighting games, but I was able to execute Hadoukens and hurricane kicks and Chun-Li's weird bird kick. And like, I could, I can get down. Like, I could play Street Fighter. I'm not great at it, but like, I could play the game. But I was like, man, some of these like stupid full circles and Z shapes and stuff you got to do to execute like certain combos. I was like, wish I had a fight stick, especially because the Super Nintendo fight stick looked awesome.
Yeah. I couldn't do any of the special moves. Not a one. To be fair, I never have been able to, ever in my entire life. Any single time, like even in Mortal Kombat and games like that, I cannot get that semicircle, half circle weirdness down consistently. I've always struggled with it. So I got to see all the special moves. I was always on the receiving end of them. So like one of the reasons why Sagat's hyper didn't bother me was because I never saw it, and I never saw it because I never got to fight him because I wasn't skilled enough to get to him. And even though I could play as him, I was not skilled enough to execute his move. Luckily, his arms are the size of half the screen, so I could just punch and kick somebody from, Dalsim distance away.
So I gotta ask, were you just playing on the default difficulty? Because you could turn it down.
No, I mean, I was playing on the default difficulty. Yeah, I got pretty far. I got past Chun-Li. Who's after Chun-Li?
I think it depends on who you start as.
No, it's consistent.
Then I don't know.
Yeah,
I know the bosses always go in the same order.
Yeah. Anyways, I got to whoever's after Chun-Li. And then I realized that I just my care left so quickly. It was just impressive. Where I was like, I think I can do it. I think I can beat this game. And then I got stuck on yet another person. And I was like, no, I don't. I'm good.
So if it makes you feel any better, there's I think either 8 or 10. Like when you go to the options, it's like easy, hard, and then there's stars between them, like just like the turbo menu on the main screen. and I think it either defaults to 3 or 4. I handily beat the game on 1 star. I managed to beat it on 2 stars. I don't think I got around to beating it on 3, but I could have, like, if I'd stuck with it, because I was like, oh, I can eventually wear the computer down because you have infinite continues. But so,
Yep.
By that standard, I also did not beat the game because I also didn't beat it on the difficulty you were unknowingly only playing at. But this is an important thing about a fighting game is if you're going to train up to be able to beat your friend because your friend is better than you, you need to be able to tweak the AI and, like bring it down and then like educate yourself up to this is as hard as fighting my friend level. Yes.
Well, and to your point, in one of my notes is that you're not supposed to be fighting the computer. You're supposed to be fighting your friends, and that's kind of the whole point is that, the computer has razor sharp knowledge of exactly where the hitbox is. But your friends don't, like the computer knows exactly when you input a thing and the optimal counter for that, but your friends don't, the purpose of this game the purpose of Smash Brothers isn't to play against 3 level 9 computers, it's to play against your friends. And if you don't want to get angry at your friends, to play with your friends against the level 9 computers. But it's, the point isn't to fight the computers. The point is to fight your friends. So a lot of the computer AI, tomfoolery, I consistently took with a grain of salt because I was like, this isn't what you're supposed to do. This is supposed to be the thing that you do until your friend comes over so that way you can learn how to beat them. And even then, even if there's something where, you figure out a way to play the game that is, just beats the mess out of everything, right? Your friends will put a stop to that. Like literally, I remember when we would play Smash Brothers or Street Fighter or anything like that, where one person was not allowed to play as a certain character because they were too good at it. It's like, yeah, great. You have already proven the fact that you can beat us with this character. Duly noted. Now stop playing as them. Like you are not, like your main is Balrog. Great. You're not allowed to play as Balrog because you own the game. So stop,
which raises an important question. Who was your main? Or did you just dance around?
Well, so I've actually, that leads into a big point I want to make. So who is your main?
So my main for actually being successful was Ryu, because Ryu's special moves.
It would be.
Well, and I mean, he is, I think, technically the hero of the story. Like, I think if you look at the Street Fighter canon, I think overall the story broadly kind of follows him. So it would make sense that he's the most approachable to play and like kind of the most well balanced because he's sort of the hero.
He's the Mario.
I remember. It's what?
He's the Mario.
Okay. For some reason, I heard he's Blanca. And I just want to be like, no, Blanca is Blanca. Blanca is obviously Blanca.
Blanca is Blanca. He is the best at being Blanca. Out of all of the Blancas I know, he's the Blankiest.
They're the Blankiest. Anyway, I do remember as a youth spending a lot of time with Chun-Li and Dalsim. Chun-Li because, I mean, she's girl Ryu, right? She's like a legitimate martial artist, but she does kung fu instead of karate. She has in this game they introduced her little like fireball attack, so she kind of even plays a little bit like Ryu. She has the crazy spinning bird kick, which is literally just a hurricane kick upside down, right? So I mean, like, she handles very similar, but she could jump off the friggin' edge of the screen, and that was dope as hell. So, you know, Chun-Li was cool. And Dalsim, of course, is like, before you could play as Sagat in Street Fighter 2, right before Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Dalsim was the one with the insane reach. And that was just always a delight. So Ryu is the short answer, but like Ryu, Chun-Li, and Dalsim, I guess, is the longer answer.
Ryu plus.
Ryu and friends.
So I mained, originally I was playing as Sagat, and then I hit my skill wall, which was against Ryu, where I got so frustrated, dude.
See, that's hilarious, because I think Sagat is the end boss of the first game where you are Ryu. So
nice.
That's kind of funny that you, like, the roles were reversed.
The issue I was having was that, you know, you can't jump down towards Ryu because he, you know, hyper uppercuts you, right? You can't.
sure you can.
Yeah, he sure you cans you. You can't linearly attack him because he'll Hadouken you. It's just he's really difficult to like get close to, right? Especially for a lumbering mound like Sagat. So then I switched to Chun-Li, and then I mained as Chun-Li through the bulk of the game. The reason why is because Chun-Li has a really strong first order optimal strategy, right? So first order optimal strategies, right? So that the idea behind this, and I'm sure you're completely back to forward verse on this, so this is not for you, this is for the listeners.
And I always appreciate you taking the time to explain it to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime you want to jump in, please, feel free.
That'd be rude.
It would. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you giving me this. This is a safe space. It's good. First order optimal strategies are ones where basically, so the idea is with, if you take like a skill versus power curve, right? So let's say that, a move has power X, right? The skill, and let's say the skill required to execute it is skill X, right? If all of a sudden, if something has power X plus 2, it should not take skill X plus 2 to execute, right? So the idea is if you kind of graph this chart, you don't want it to be linear. You want it to be kind of a quadratic curve. Is that the idea is that something that only requires a little bit more skill to do gives you a substantial power increase, right? But the issue is that most power curves don't play out like that. What they actually play out as is that there's some stuff that takes some more skill to do and doesn't really give you a great power jump, but there's something that requires very, very little skill to do this disproportionately powerful, and it is made for new players, so that way you can get some kind of a word in edgewise with more skilled players. Another exemplar of this is like my understanding is like the noob tube in Call of Duty, right? Where basically the idea is that it's literally made for noobs. No experienced player would ever use it. There are way better games, better strategies in the game, but when you're a noob and you don't know what you're doing, this helps you get your first word in edgewise, right? So there are similar things in Street Fighter, and one of the first order optimal strategies. Oh, and also a lot of this information I got from Extra Credits, so please go support them and all that good stuff. I don't want to, say be ripping them off.
Yeah, I appreciate that honesty.
Yeah. So one of the first order optimal strategies within Street Fighter is Chun-Li's hyper kick, right? Is because it takes very, very little skill to do and is bananas powerful. So one of the downsides is that with a first order optimal strategy is that if you don't plan your skill to power curve well enough, people can kind of latch onto that and never give it up because they never really take the time to master the skills that you really need them to do because you don't incentivize them to do so. The amount of skill that it takes to execute Sagat's hyper beam or hyper wave, right, is so much higher than Chun-Li's hyper kick, right? That it's like, well, why do that? I can just do the hyper kick. So then the problem is that you get way further in the game than you reasonably should with only using this one strategy. So then when all of a sudden that strategy stops working, you feel betrayed because all of a sudden the game from your seat hit a insane difficulty spike, and it didn't. The difficulty's been slowly progressing. It's just the thing you've done to kludge your way through it has now stopped working. And now the game developers expect you to have a tremendous amount of skill that you've never really developed. So all of that being said about this game in particular, I personally found while playing the single player mode to have that problem of really disproportionately allowing you to lean on a first order optimal strategy. But that may have just been me. I don't know whether this game handled it well or poorly. But for me personally, my experience was that once I hit that skill wall, I was like, yeah, I'm done because the only thing I know how to do is Chun-Li's hyper kick. And I can't even touch anybody with any other character. Like the minute I switched off of Chun-Li, I got my lunch eaten so much harder that I was like, well, there's no point in playing anybody but Chun-Li.
So I agree with the sentiment. I think one additional thing worth considering is the thing that would make a player not fall victim to, oh, well, this was the only thing I knew how to do and it doesn't work anymore, so I guess I'm just not going to play the game, is that you're only playing single player to practice against for when you fight against your friends, and your friends will not stand for that nonsense. there's a reason you're not allowed to scorpion spear uppercut in Mortal Kombat until they die, and it's because the loop is impossible to break. It's not fun. And if your friend was doing that, you would reach over and slap him in his dumb face, like I have definitely done and had done to me, right? So if you find a move in a fighting game, and there are moves in this game that are hyper exploitable, right? If you can execute them properly, you can basically just stun lock someone and murder house them. And there isn't a lot of places that happens, which speaks to how well balanced the game is overall, but there's usually somewhere. And the game doesn't really, maybe even can't really, but it definitely doesn't really in this case do anything to prevent you from playing that way if you choose to and letting that ruin your experience. I think that they are arguably relying on the world and the likely circumstances under which you are playing, which is against your friends, because your friends will not tolerate you just standing with your back against the wall and hitting medium kick over and over and over and over.
Absolutely. And that's the big thing is that, and again, the thing that I just can't stress enough, which is that this game is made to be played with humans, not to be played again. The story mode exists because why not? You know, I mean, like even when you look at Smash Brothers, which, you know, draws heavily from all of these types of fighting games, like they have a story mode, but the story mode, and this is about as well fleshed out as the story mode in Smash Brothers is, which is not at all, you know? I mean, it wasn't until like way later and it started getting weird with some of the stories that they started throwing at us with like whatever the most recent one was. That one was so complicated I couldn't follow it. I'm like, so I'm fighting people, right? Like there's some nega energy that I don't know. All that being said is that yeah, I mean it's not meant to be played as a linear style game. Nobody went to the you know playground and said, "Oh, I beat Street Fighter 2 yesterday." Nobody cares. Dodson, I got Dodson here. See, nobody cares. So it's that. So I agree completely. You mentioned stunning and stun locking. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. That got very upsetting to me.
But sometimes it's stars and sometimes it's birds.
Oh, hey, thank you. So no, I did not like that. And here's why: is because I don't. And please, anybody who's like an expert in fighting games, if you could hop in the comments and shut the hell up, because I don't care. I don't like it. But no, I'm sure that there is a reason. I am always open to learning. So if somebody wants to educate me, please shut up, because I don't care. So I'm giving you mixed signals. To me, it's a bad mechanic because it gives bonus points to the person who's already winning, right? So I'm sitting here on the receiving end of multiple awful blows, especially from Ryu. So like Ryu would Hadouken me and then, like kick me in the face, or kick me in the face and then Hadouken me. I think it was that in that order. Yeah, because it kicked me, it knocked me back, and then Hadouken me while I was in the air, and then I'd get up and I'm stun locked. And I'm like, okay, so can I play the game at some point? Can I please just get a chance to do anything? So now all of a sudden I've gone from being at full health to like 1/4 of my health left. And there was literally nothing I could do about it. And to your point, there are ways to get into those cycles, which the game will capitalize on if you play it too hard of a difficulty like my dumb butt did. But at the same point in time, like that I don't understand the purpose of the stun mechanic, because it further widens the gap. Like if you are winning, you will now win harder. It is the beer pong of, fighting games, where it's like if you start to lose, you're probably going to lose harder,
I think the right way to do something like that I do not feel like is happening here, but I could imagine this happening in later Street Fighter games or in other games that wanted to have like a daze, is make me dazing my opponent really risky, right? Really hard to do, or really risky, or if I screw it up, then I get dazed or something, because then you've balanced, or you start to attempt to balance the risk to reward, right? And it's like, oh, if I can daze him, then I'll be able to win. But if I screw it up, then he's going to punch me in my dumb face. and then I might lose because he'll get to punch me in my dumb face, right? So you create a commensurate price with the thing you're buying, which is them being stunned and you getting to do extra damage. It's not what's happening in Street Fighter 2 Turbo : Hyper Fighting. What's happening here is I punched you in the face 6 times, and then the game says, "Would you like to take a free shot?" And it's like, yes, yes, game, I would. And for me, because I don't know why, I suck at throwing in fighting games. If I managed to stun my opponent, I always used it as an opportunity to throw, because otherwise I'd never get that move off. So it's just like, I stunned them. I'm going to casually walk over to you now and body slam.
Yeah, body slam, kidney punch, kidney punch, kidney punch, and pause, kidney punch. So actually, I think a really good exemplar in a fighting game of how stunning should work is in Smash Brothers, right? You get stunned when you overuse your shield, So one, that puts stunning back in my court, like if I am the one being stunned, like I will only be stunned if I allow it to happen, It may be like my best option or only option, but the idea is that if you're just sitting there with your guard up the whole time, as opposed to just, the person being like, well, I guess I'm just doing this now, or I'm just slamming into you nonstop. And then your shield will drop for a second, and I'll get one hit off, and then you'll throw your shield back up. And, it just becomes this exhausting mess, right? It's like, no, if you keep doing that, your shield's going to go down. So I'm going to be Samus. I'm going to get my full on charge blast, and I'm going to knock your shield down, and then I'm going to point blank shoot you in your dumb face, right? So I think that's an example of like, that's a good, as you said, risk to reward, where it's like, okay, and I would be way more okay with the stunning if the likelihood of you being stunned went way up the more you blocked. So if you're just sitting there like backing up and running away and backing up, and then it's like, that's fine. But that first hit I actually get on you, you are going to get stunned, and it is going to be delicious when I throw you across the screen. It's going to make me feel so good. Like that'd be great. But in this case, yeah, it was just kind of like, a 2-for-1 sale for punching George in the face. It was a punching George in the face fire sale. Everything must go. And I just did not care for that at all.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, to your point, like it's done very differently in Smash Brothers. I suspect it's probably done very differently in later Street Fighter games, right? Because it creates the exact imbalance you're describing. And it's super fun if you're on the face punching side, right? Not so much if you're on the getting your face punched side.
That is generally true of face punching. That is a very one-sided equation as far as generating joy goes.
Yeah, true. You did just
sorry. This picture, Marie Kondo. Does this spark joy? It's like it depends,
Yeah, you got the person who threw the punch and the person who got punched, and just like nodding and furious head shaking. It's like, no, come on. Remember how excited we were when I punched you? And it's like, no, I was not excited when we punched me.
Yes, that.
But you did just casually mention something that I forgot to mention, so thank you, which is this game does jumping via up, and it does blocking via back. And back, as in away from your opponent, right? So it could be left or right. Blocking only happens if you are within a certain distance of your opponent, or they have done a ranged attack that is like on its way across the screen to you, right? So if we are standing at opposite sides of the screen and I'm holding back and you're just standing still punching, I won't automatically block because I'm outside of whatever the hitbox or the block box is for that. If you throw a sonic boom, then I would block because it's eventually going to get over to me. I don't know how else you would do this, because you can't just have like more face buttons forever and ever and shoulder buttons, and like on a fight stick you just have like a huge grid of buttons. I don't honestly know if I would prefer that, but I don't love it being back. Like it took me a minute to re-internalize that that's what was happening, because I don't play a lot of fighting games, and when I do, it's usually like a Smash Brothers, right, which has a block button. And so I just found myself getting punched in the jaw more often than I should have, because I was like, oh, he's about to punch me in the jaw, I'll just press the block button, there isn't one, oh no. Right, and then you get punched in the jaw, and it's like, Would I internalize that eventually? Yes. This may even be standard across the fighting genre. I don't honestly know, but it's part of me was like, I don't know where I would put this extra button, but I kind of wish this was mapped to a button.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, in Smash Brothers, it is mapped to a button. It's definitely a thing of the genre. So I think that it's something that once you do internalize it, it becomes normal. I mean, it's just the one thing that's just a staple of a genre that, you know, it just blows my mind how much people who are not familiar with it struggle with it is the dual analog sticks. I mean, if you, I literally handed that off to my parents one time and was just, my mind was blown with how much they struggled with it, you know? Where I was like, no, so this one moves you forward and backwards and side to side, and this one like changes the direction that you're looking in, you know? And literally I watched them just point themselves straight at the ground and just walk in circles, you know? And like, how are you doing this? They're like, well, I'm trying to go to the side. I want to look to the side. I'm like, well, right now you are looking forward and running to the side, which is fine, but that's not what you. So yeah, it's just one of those things that you've internalized it over hours and hours of just playing it. So I don't know if all fighters work like that. I know all the ones that I've played do. And I do think it is something that you would internalize eventually if fighting games was something you want to become proficient in. And I think that this is kind of something that is true for both of us, is that this is not something that we are nor have any desire to be proficient in. It's not that fighting games are bad games. It's just not my cup of tea, you know? So it's going to be kind of difficult for us to kind of say, you know, like this is a good thing or this is a bad thing when we're like, I don't know. It's part of the genre and nobody else seems to have any issues with it. So I guess it's cool. Like, are we all cool? It's kind of like if, you know, you're in like a huge, you know, like tavern filled with Irish people, and one of them calls another one like an Irish slur, and you're like, is everybody else okay with this? Like, I don't think I would be okay with this, but like, is everybody else okay with this? Because it's not really like me. It's not my thing. Like I'm not offended. I'm offended for you. Are we okay? Like, is everything cool? Like, should I be upset? Like, it's kind of like that.
Now you've just made me think that I want to do that with a made up thing just to see if I can like goad someone into going along with a cultural thing that's not their culture, and then just be like, you failed the test.
That's what Daryl does to Michael Scott in The Office. He's constantly getting Michael Scott to do like weird stuff, you know, where he's like, zippity zoppity, give me the boppity or whatever.
Yeah, that. I basically want to do that, but not even for my culture, right? Because Daryl's supposed to be doing it about like cool black guy culture, but he is. And like, I would love to do it about a culture I'm obviously not, because, you know, you got to start with your own culture and then you work up to, can I get this person to make a fake reference in a culture that I have no business being an authority on?
Well, I think that the best way to do that would be, I don't know if this is exactly what you're talking about, but you watch Scrubs, right? Yeah. So you remember, so there was the one joke that, you know, like that I just always get a kick out of. I think about this about once a month, where it's the janitor and he's standing next to JD and he goes, 4-letter, because he's doing a crossword. It's like 4-letter word, a blank in one's armor. And JD looks at him and goes, chink. And then, you know, he like look and just like takes a step back, and there's like a Chinese person standing right beside him, you know, and JD's like, what? No. And he's like, no, the janitor asked. And the janitor's like, whoa, hey, no, I don't know what's going on here. That'd be one way to
that's a far more vicious interpretation of the joke, but it's certainly like it's in the same family.
Yeah, it's in the genre of getting somebody in trouble for something that they didn't mean to do.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, that's kind of all I got.
Yeah, no, I'm also ready to answer that final question, which is, for me, I would say I required no nostalgia goggles to play this game. I don't think anyone honestly would. Like, if you want to play a 2D fighter from this era, there are way, way worse ones. We have played some way, way worse ones than this. Like, I wasn't excellent at this game, but I could see as I put time in, I was getting better. I could see where my gaps were and kind of knew if I wanted to work on it, like what I would need to work on. I had fun. I actually enjoyed playing it. And considering I don't really care for fighters and the less than ideal experience we've had with some of the other fighters we've played, I was actually pretty stoked when I kind of sat back, like after the last bit I played, I kind of sat back and I was like, it's still pretty okay. It's still pretty good. Play it with other humans. Like that's the one, if you had to put an asterisk on this, like if you're going to play this game, I really recommend you have a way to play it with another person, because it's just what they expected. It's what the experience is designed for. Single player is practice mode and versus is playing the actual game. So if you want to play the actual game, you need actual other people. But otherwise, I mean, just no nostalgia goggles.
Yeah, agreed. I also was no nostalgia goggles required. I didn't really enjoy this just because, again, I don't really enjoy fighting games, and I was apparently playing it on a very high difficulty. But to your point is, I did feel that I could get better over time. Like there were definitely some of the mechanics that I was starting to internalize. Like when I was fighting Ryu, I was eventually like, okay, well, he can do this thing. Like the best way to kind of fight this character is to kind of hang back and do thing A, whereas this one, I want to play a little bit more aggressively. This person, I can't allow them to do thing A, because if they do thing, like they do thing A really well. Like Balrog has a dash attack, and I was like, okay, so I can't let him stay in front of me for too long because he'll dash right at me. I have to aggressively attack him and like move around him. So I definitely think that yeah, as far as fighting games go, this game's great. It absolutely holds up. It doesn't do anything where I was just kind of like, oh God, that used to be a thing. In fact, a lot of what it does, I think, was genre defining. So if somebody asked me if I would recommend this, I hyper would.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You never think back much less.